This is the entire story of Donald Trump you can fall asleep to. But before we start, please tell me in the comments where you are listening from, and what time is it for you. Because time gets weird in this story. Truth does too. He was rich but claimed to be self-made. He broke things but called himself a builder. He lost money, lawsuits, elections, but insisted he always won. Even his face tells a contradiction. The scowl that sold books about power came from a man who craved applause like oxygen. He claimed strength but feared humiliation. He branded himself as tough, but never let a joke land on him without firing back at 3 a.m. Trump didn't invent contradiction, but he turned it into a brand. He was a populist with a golden toilet, a TV star who said the media couldn't be trusted, a billionaire who promised to fight for the working man while stiffing contractors and dodging taxes. People say they want authenticity. What they really want is commitment to the bit. And Trump? He never broke character. Not once. So close your eyes. You don't have to believe it. He didn't either. Let's begin Dot, the Prince of Queens. He wasn't trained for war, but he learned how to win. His first kingdom wasn't gilded. It was brick, beige, Queens. Donald John Trump was born in 1946 in Jamaica Estates, a suburb just clean enough to pretend it wasn't part of New York City. His father, Fred Trump, had already built an empire there, though no one called it that. It was row houses and low-rise apartments, FHA loans and military contracts, government money wearing private sector pants, a quiet racket. Not flashy, but consistent, reliable. German discipline disguised with a new last name and a cleaner backstory. Fred told people he was Swedish. He wasn't. He just thought it sounded better in America after World War II. Donald watched him, tall, imposing. Hair slicked like steel cable. Fred Trump didn't smile much unless he was denying a black family a lease, which happened a lot. In fact, that was the first time young Donald saw his name in the papers. When the Department of Justice sued Fred and Donald Trump for housing discrimination in 1973, he was 27, but that comes later. First, there was childhood. Queen's kid royalty. The Trump house had 23 rooms. There was a chauffeur, a maid, 2 Cadillacs. Not old money, but clean enough to pass. Donald was the 4th of 5 kids. Freddie, the oldest, was supposed to be the heir. But Freddie liked flying planes and drinking gin and not being yelled at by his father. That was a problem. In the Trump family, softness was treason. So Fred pivoted. He saw something different in Donald, not warmth, not curiosity, but aggression. A kind of instinct to win arguments even after they were over, even when he lost. Donald threw erasers, hit teachers. He once punched a music instructor in the face. Fred called it energy. Schools called it disruptive. So at 13, Donald was shipped off to the New York Military Academy. Marching in formation, learning to rule, military school was supposed to teach him discipline. Maybe it did. Or maybe it just taught him that life was a pecking order. That if you yelled loud enough, marched hard enough, got enough medals real or fake, people listened. And once they listened, you could say almost anything. He became captain of the baseball team, student leader. He wore a uniform well, said yes, sir, when needed. Said no, looser, when not. What he learned there wasn't service. It was domination. That the appearance of order was more powerful than the practice of it. That if you say something with enough confidence, it becomes true enough. He never went to war, but he watched one on TV. Vietnam. He had 5 draft deferments. Bad feet, he said. Bone spurs, maybe. Or maybe he just knew early on. Real power doesn't get drafted. business school for showmen. From there, he landed at Fordham University. 2 years later, he transferred to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He would go on to call it the best school in the world, super genius level, very hard to get into. That's true. For most people. But Donald Trump didn't need to be most people. His grades were unremarkable. His personality, exactly the opposite. He wasn't known for brilliance. He was known for certainty. And in the world of Wharton, certainty often wins. Especially if your father's been greasing the road in front of you since birth. He didn't learn much finance. But he learned something more useful. How to sound like someone who did. I'm very smart, he would say, years later. A very stable genius. You don't need a GPA for that. The first big deal. Donald graduated in 1968 and went straight into the family business, not as a new recruit, but as a young prince. Fred gave him a role, gave him capital, and gave him cover. The money was there. What Donald added was scale, drama, headlines. The first big deal? Swifton Village. A 200-unit complex in Cincinnati. Not exactly the Manhattan skyline, but enough to get his name on a brochure. Fred co-signed the loan. Fred signed most of the checks. But Donald put his name in bold. He wasn't shy, he wasn't humble, and he wasn't apologizing. Soon he started looking across the river, into Manhattan, into mirrors. Fred told him to stay in Queens. Too risky, he warned. Too much glitz. They'll eat you alive. Donald nodded and ignored him completely. He didn't want to be a landlord. He wanted to be a name. Fred's world was about money. Donald's was about image. One built apartments. The other would build Trump. The seeds of the myth. By the mid-1970s, Donald had already figured out the formula. Borrow money from Fred. Make a loud deal. Get a quote in the newspaper. Say it was all you. He found Manhattan real estate like a stage and made his entrance loud. Deals with Hyatt. Plans for hotels. Grand statements. Gold trim. Names on everything. It wasn't just ambition, it was performance. Other developers read spreadsheets. Trump read headlines. One early partner said, he was a great salesman, but mostly to himself. That was the trick. He believed what he said, long before anyone else did, even when he didn't. Daddy's money, your name here. By now, the contradiction was fully blooming. He was the self-made heir. He was both the underdog and the empire. He had a millionaire father, but told the world, I started with a small loan of $1 million. That number kept changing, by the way. Sometimes $1 million, sometimes $14 million, sometimes nothing. In truth, Fred Trump transferred Donald over $400 million across his lifetime. Some of it legal, some of it creative, some of it outright fraud, according to later reports. But that part of the story never stuck, because Donald told it better. He told it like a movie, a comeback story, a hero's journey, even though he never left the palace. He wasn't interested in facts. He was building a legend. Lessons from Fred. Fred never loved risk. But Donald craved it, needed it. He called it playing to win. And if he lost, well, someone else would pay. A bank, a contractor, the taxpayers. But don't get it wrong, Fred shaped him. Not with warmth, but with rules. Winning is everything. Weakness is death. Loyalty is for other people. Fred saw the world in transactions. Donald saw it in ratings. But they agreed on one thing. You keep your name clean, even if nothing else is. Coming into view. By the time he was 30, Donald had made the front page of the New York Times. Not for a scandal, for a deal. That was the victory. Visibility. Presence. He was becoming a character in the city's story. Still new, still fragile, but unmistakable. He wore suits that were too loud, ties that were too long, opinions that were too confident. He said he would build the biggest tower New York had ever seen. He said he would be the biggest name in real estate. He wasn't lying. He was willing it into being. Because in Trump's world, there's no real difference between truth and branding. No line between who you are and what you sell. And what he was selling was Trump. His buildings were tall, his debts were taller. The 1980s were loud. Neon lights, power suits, Wall Street roaring like a lion in heat. And in the middle of it all stood Donald Trump, taller than most buildings, louder than most voices, flashier than any gold watch. He wasn't just a real estate developer anymore. He was a brand. Welcome to Trump World. You didn't just buy an apartment or an office space. You bought Trump. The name was everywhere, on skyscrapers, steaks, ties, even a line of vodka, later a university. It was gold-plated ambition wrapped in a blonde comb-over. Trump Tower, finished in 1983, was his boldest statement yet. A 58-story glass and bronze monument on Fifth Avenue. The kind of building that made you look up and feel small. It wasn't just real estate, it was a throne. Inside, the lobby sparkled with waterfalls and marble. The elevator doors gleamed like vaults. It was designed to feel like a palace, but for the new kings of capitalism. Trump wasn't selling apartments, he was selling status. The art of the deal and the headline. In 1987, Trump published The Art of the Deal. It was part memoir, part self-help, part brag book. He didn't just write the book, he was the book. It told a story. A self-made man who beat the odds, outsmarted the competition, and built an empire from a small loan of $1 million. It was mostly fiction. The truth Fred's millions, the bailouts, the corporate bankruptcies, was swept under a velvet carpet. But the book sold. Millions of copies. It made Trump a household name beyond real estate circles. And it made him a media darling. Tabloid royalty, Tunket. The tabloids loved Trump like a soap opera loves drama. People magazine, New York Post, the National Enquirer all devoured the spectacle. Trump dated models. Married Ivana, a former ski champion from Czechoslovakia, and later Marla Maples. His marriages were public theater. He was photographed partying with celebrities, from Michael Jackson to the Rat Pack remnants. He was a regular on gossip pages, always at the center of some headline. A fight, a feud over a fight. His personality was bigger than life. Brash, bombastic, unapologetically confident. He spoke in superlatives. Tremendous, fantastic, best ever. His catchphrase, "You're fired," would later become iconic, but in the 80s, it was just his swagger made audible. The celebrity persona takes shape. Donald Trump wasn't just a businessman. He was a character crafted with precision. He wore red ties that were too long. He posed with arms crossed, jaw set, smirk ready. He mastered the art of the soundbite, dropping lines designed to make headlines. "I don't make deals for the money. I make money for the deals." I like to think big. If you're going to be thinking anything, you might as well think big. But beneath the bravado was a curious mix of insecurity and showmanship. A man desperate to prove himself, even as he surrounded himself with mirrors reflecting the image he wanted to see. He was an actor playing a role, and the role was Donald Trump. From New York to national stage, the 1980s gave him the stage. The tabloids gave him the spotlight. But Trump wanted more. He wanted to be unavoidable. In 1988, he launched a plan to build casinos in Atlantic City. More on that later. He wanted his name on every building, every marquee. If people saw Trump, they saw success. even if the truth was more complicated. He hired publicists, lawyers, and ghostwriters. He turned real estate deals into media events. A broken deal wasn't a failure, it was a learning experience. A lawsuit wasn't a loss, it was part of the game. The power of the name. Trump's name became a logo. It adorned everything from towers to stakes to ties. Some were licensed, meaning he didn't own the business, but got paid for his name. Some were owned outright. Many were both. He understood branding before most did. Other developers built quietly, hoping their buildings would speak for themselves. Trump shouted so loud you couldn't ignore him. His ego was the loudest building in the skyline. Friends in high places. The 80s were also the decade when Trump learned the power of connections. He rubbed shoulders with the politicians, celebrities, and business magnates. He attended Mar-a-Lago, the exclusive Palm Beach club his father bought, which became his own playground. He befriended Rudy Giuliani, a rising political star. He hobnobbed with media moguls and made deals with financiers who didn't ask too many questions. Money flowed in, and so did the gossip. The contradictions multiply. But behind the scenes, contradictions bubbled. His buildings were impressive, but often plagued with construction problems. His finances were complicated, but rarely transparent. He touted himself as a self-made billionaire, but depended on family wealth and bailouts. He said he hated debt, but loved borrowing. He claimed to be a genius, but often played fast and loose with facts. He demanded loyalty, but often betrayed allies. It was a contradiction at the core of his persona. He was the ultimate showman pretending to be a ruthless businessman. Or maybe the other way around. The media's favorite villain. By the late 1980s, Trump was impossible to ignore. He was part villain, part hero, part clown, part king. He was a walking contradiction wrapped in a power tie. Journalists wrote about his outrageous claims and extravagant lifestyle. They documented his legal battles and tax disputes. They celebrated his victories and mocked his failures. But no matter what they wrote, the man kept selling himself as a winner. The celebrity culture that made him. The 1980s were the decade of excess. Money was the measure of success. Visibility was power, and image was everything. Trump didn't just adapt to this culture. He embodied it. He turned himself into a walking, talking symbol of the era. The man who was too rich to care, too loud to ignore, and too confident to fail. He was a product of his time and a master of it. The art of self-promotion. In the 1980s, before social media, before reality TV, before viral videos, Trump understood something most didn't. The story matters more than the truth. He mastered the art of self-promotion like no one else. When the New York Times published a less-than-glowing profile, Trump showed up with a camera crew to publicly threaten a lawsuit. When tabloids questioned his finances, he claimed they were jealous of his success. Every interview was an audition for a role he wanted. The billionaire kingpin. His press conferences were theater. His photo ops were carefully choreographed. He knew how to make headlines by saying outrageous things. Remember the time he told the New York Times he was worth $10 billion? The paper quietly estimated $2.7 billion. Did Trump care? Not really. He knew the bigger the number, the bigger the buzz. The nightlife and the name. Trump's nightlife became as famous as his buildings. He was a regular at Studio 54, the legendary nightclub known for decadence and celebrity excess. He posed for photos with supermodels, politicians, and rock stars. The paparazzi loved him. His life was a revolving door of parties, yachts, and headlines. The party wasn't just fun, it was an extension of his brand. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a celebrity. His name became shorthand for luxury and extravagance, even if the reality behind it was often more complicated. When the spotlight turns, but fame is a double-edged sword. In 1989, the New York Times broke a story revealing Trump's shaky financial footing. It described loans in default, tax shelters, and mysterious shell companies. The story shook the market. Investors panicked. For the first time, cracks appeared in Trump's carefully curated image. The tabloids pounced. Headlines screamed, "Trump's empire on the brink." The billionaire's debt disaster. For a man obsessed with winning, it was a crisis. Handling the crisis. Trump responded with his usual style, bold claims, no apologies, and relentless media appearances. He insisted he was totally solvent and that the rumors were fake news long before the term was popularized. He gave interviews where he downplayed the debt, calling it part of doing business. It was classic Trump. Deflect, dominate, distract. The media frenzy only made him more famous. A star is born. By the early 1990s, Donald Trump was no longer just a real estate developer. He was a public figure, a celebrity whose name sold magazines, TV segments, and books. This fame would soon become his most valuable asset and pave the way for his next big move. Bankruptcy king, he lost billions and got richer doing it. He always wanted to be a casino boss, not because he liked gambling. He didn't. Not because he understood the business. He didn't. But because a casino was shiny, loud, always open, always watching. It was, in other words, a mirror, and he loved mirrors. Atlantic City was no Vegas. It was the sad cousin, the one who smelled like cigarette smoke and old carpet. But it was open for business. And in the 1980s, business meant one thing to Donald Trump: expansion. He called it bold. Fred called it stupid. But Donald didn't care what Fred said anymore. Rolling the dice. In 1984, he opened Trump Plaza. It was tacky in the exact way he liked. Chandeliers, black glass, carpeting that looked like a tie from 1987. It lost money almost immediately. But the thing about Donald Trump is that the scoreboard never mattered as long as the announcer said his name. He kept going. Trump Castle. Then the big one, Taj Mahal. He called it the eighth wonder of the world. It cost over $1 billion to build, mostly borrowed. Junk bonds, sky-high interest rates, deals made late at night with people who didn't ask enough questions. It was more of a bet than a plan. He didn't read the fine print. He read the headlines. The house always wins unless Trump owns it. The Taj opened in 1990, right into a recession. The carpets were new. The roulette tables gleamed, but the debt bled through the walls. Trump owed hundreds of millions. His casinos cannibalized each other. There weren't enough gamblers in America to keep up with his ego. But that didn't stop him from bragging. He called the losses strategic. The debts, a natural part of business. And when creditors came knocking, he had a new trick. Chapter 11. Not once, not twice, 6 times. That's not exaggeration, that's math. The bankruptcies. A brief carnival of collapse. Here they are. In order. Trump Taj Mahal, 1991. Lost nearly $1 billion in debt. Trump gave up half his stake to stay afloat. Trump Castle, 1992. Couldn't cover its loans. Another restructuring. Trump Plaza Hotel in NYC, 1992. Not a casino, but a bonus bust. Lost control to lenders. Trump Hotels, Casino Resorts, 2004. Filed again. He stayed on as chairman somehow. Trump Entertainment Resorts, 2009. Back in court like clockwork. Trump Entertainment Resorts, again 2014. Same company, same problems. He always made sure the bankruptcies were for the companies, not himself. That was the trick. The losses were theirs. The name remained his. That name was a firewall. He'd burn the house down and walk away in a custom suit. The empire of illusion. While the numbers collapsed, the myth inflated. He was on TV, on the covers of Forbes, Time, Spy. Sometimes mocked, sometimes lionized, but always present. He learned that in America, there's only one real currency: attention. The casinos lost money, but Trump won airtime. Investors suffered, but his face stayed famous. To the public, he was the monopoly man, grinning in gold. To his lenders, he was a financial sinkhole in an expensive tie. They kept loaning him money anyway. Why? Because of the name. Because of the brand. And because sometimes they were just as reckless as he was. Enter Deutsche Bank. Most American banks eventually stopped lending to him. He stiffed too many, missed too many payments, sued a few of them just for fun. But Deutsche Bank was different. It was German, yes, but aggressive, hungry, willing to play on the edge. They gave him hundreds of millions between 1998 and 2015. For hotels, for towers, for golf courses. Deals that no one else would touch. When he defaulted on a $640 million loan in 2008, what did he do? He sued them for $3 billion. His argument? The 2008 crash was an act of God. The bank countered, no, it was an act of Trump. And yet, in a twist only possible in Trump world, they lent to him again. Deutsche's private wealth arm, separate from the division he sued, approved new loans. For the Chicago Tower, for Doral, for Washington, D.C. It was a tangled mess of risk and reputation. Bankers warned each other in emails. This guy's a walking liability, some said. Others nodded and signed the checks anyway. In the end, Trump owed Deutsche more than $300 million, and they held on longer than anyone else. Why? Because even the bankers got caught in the illusion. Win big, lose bigger, still win somehow. Trump didn't build wealth. He built scale. He made everything so large, so public, so chaotic that no one could untangle it, not even him. His debts were legendary. His assets were mysterious. One year, he claimed to be worth $10 billion. Another, he told a court he only had $150 million in cash. He sued reporters for underestimating his fortune, then told tax officials he was practically broke. He said value was based on feelings. He wasn't joking. The collapse that never came. By every normal rule of business, his career should have ended in the 1990s. He should have been a cautionary tale, a trivia answer. Whatever happened to that guy with the weird hair and the boardwalk casinos? But no, he just kept going. Because failure wasn't a bug in the Trump system. It was the system. The pattern became clear. Make a big promise. Borrow a lot of money. Build something shiny. Watch it underperform. Default. Blame someone else. Repeat. Most people fear failure. Trump monetized it. He realized that bankruptcy wasn't the end. It was a negotiation tactic. A branding opportunity. A pivot point. The lawsuits piled up. The debt towers swayed. But the man just smiled and said, "It's all tremendous." Collateral damage. Of course, people got hurt. Investors, small businesses, employees, contractors went unpaid. Shareholders were wiped out. Retirement accounts vanished. He called them smart investors, said they should have known the risks. He didn't mourn them. He didn't mention them. He said he used the laws brilliantly, and many voters agreed. Some even admired it. If he can game the system, maybe he'll fix it. That was the logic. Or the dream. Casinos close. The brand running. By the mid-2010s, Atlantic City was a graveyard. The Trump Plaza shut its doors. The Taj Mahal went bankrupt again and was sold for pennies. His name was stripped from buildings. Some were imploded entirely. But none of that touched him. He had already left the boardwalk behind. His new game wasn't gambling. It was reputation arbitrage. In America, you don't need to be successful. You just need to look like it. And Trump looked successful on TV. That's what made him immune. That's what made him inevitable. A brief note on numbers. It's impossible to pin down his net worth. He's told so many versions, even he may not remember. What's true? He inherited hundreds of millions. He lost most of it. He got it back from banks, from licensing deals, from TV. He lost it again. And somehow each time his name got louder. He said once, "It's very possible that I could be the first presidential candidate to run and make money on it." He said that like it was a joke. It wasn't. The bankruptcy king's crown. By 2015, he was mocked as the bankruptcy king. But the joke was on everyone else. He still had jets, still had buildings, still had suits with 2 long ties and a gold Sharpie in every pocket. He called himself a genius. He told crowds he knew the system better than anyone. And then with a smirk, "That's why only I can fix it." The crowd roared, not because they believed it, because he believed it. And because by then, failure was just part of the show. TV made him a boss. Real life never questioned it. By the early 2000s, Donald Trump had a problem. His empire was struggling, his brand was tarnished by bankruptcies, and his reputation as a savvy businessman was far from bulletproof. But Trump didn't just survive scandals and failures. He reinvented himself. The secret: television. The birth of The Apprentice. In 2003, NBC premiered The Apprentice, a reality show that would redefine Trump's public image. It was a simple premise. A group of ambitious contestants competed in business challenges, and each week one was fired by the host, Donald Trump himself. The show was a hit. Viewers were captivated by Trump's larger-than-life persona, the confident, no-nonsense CEO who demanded results and delivered catchphrases with ruthless charm. "You're fired!" Those 2 words became a cultural phenomenon, echoing far beyond the television screen. Crafting the myth. The Apprentice didn't just entertain, it created a myth. Donald Trump was no longer just a businessman. He was the deal-maker, a master negotiator. A visionary leader who built an empire from nothing. The show portrayed him as a king of capitalism, a tough boss with a golden touch. But the reality was more complicated. While The Apprentice showed boardroom battles and flashy challenges, it glossed over Trump's real business history. The bankruptcies, the debts, the lawsuits, and the financial rescues. The show was scripted reality, a crafted narrative that suited Trump's ambitions. Behind the curtain. In truth, Trump's business career was filled with the contradictions. His corporate empire had faced 6 bankruptcies by this point. He was no stranger to financial failure. Yet The Apprentice rarely touched on that past. Instead, it painted Trump as a flawless winner, confident, decisive, and brilliant. Even contestants who later spoke out described the show as highly produced, with many moments staged or edited for drama. The power of media. Television gave Trump a new kind of power, cultural influence. His image as a tough, successful businessman entered living rooms across America every week. People who might never read a business newspaper knew the apprentice Trump. This platform also allowed Trump to control his narrative. He could showcase strength, intelligence, and authority qualities that helped him later when he entered politics. From reality TV to reality. The show's popularity transformed Trump from a fading real estate mogul into a household name with mass appeal. But it also created a dangerous illusion. Viewers believed Trump was a master deal-maker because they saw him act like one on TV. They believed the myth because the show told them so. In truth, Trump's track record as a deal-maker was mixed. Many of his deals were bailouts, partnerships, and leveraged buyouts that shifted risk onto others. His biggest wins often came at others' expense. Yet The Apprentice never told that story. The Celebrity CEO. The show's success gave Trump celebrity status on an unprecedented scale. He appeared on talk shows, late-night programs, and magazine covers. His persona as a bold, fearless businessman was cemented. But with celebrity came scrutiny. Critics and journalists started to ask how much of this image was real. The Apprentice and the Business Empire. While Trump's TV persona flourished, his real estate ventures struggled. Several properties underperformed and rumors of financial instability persisted. But Trump used the show's success to promote his brand. He launched a line of Trump-branded products from steaks to water to ties capitalizing on his TV fame. His name became a global marketing tool. The irony of the deal. Ironically, the man who claimed to be a master deal-maker often preferred publicity stunts to actual deal-making. His business moves were sometimes reckless, sometimes clever, but rarely as smooth as his TV persona suggested. Deals were frequently renegotiated, delayed, or defaulted on. Yet the public narrative remained. Trump was a winner, a deal-maker par excellence. Political aspirations brewing. The Apprentice didn't just build Trump's celebrity, it set the stage for his political future. By showcasing himself as a decisive leader who could manage chaos and cut through red tape, Trump positioned himself as a candidate for a different kind of power. The show was a proving ground, a political audition. It cultivated a fan base that believed in Trump's leadership even if his actual business record was flawed. Critics and supporters. Trump's media reign was polarizing. Supporters praised his straightforward style and business savvy. Critics decried the manufactured nature of his image and questioned his ethics. But few could deny the show's impact. It transformed Trump from a controversial real estate figure into a symbol of American success and ambition. Lessons in image control. Trump's mastery of television showed a deeper lesson. Image often matters more than reality in public life. By controlling the narrative, Trump controlled perception. His television persona became a powerful tool in shaping how millions saw him. This control would prove crucial as he moved toward the political arena. The Apprentice, more than a show. While The Apprentice was billed as a business competition, it was also a carefully curated stage for Trump's persona. Producers knew that Trump's real star power wasn't just in judging contestants, but in embodying a larger-than-life character who symbolized American success and toughness. Episodes often emphasized Trump's catchphrases, his confident walk, and the dramatic boardroom moments where he'd deliver a verdict. The phrase, "you're fired," became synonymous not just with the show, but with Trump himself. But the show's focus on spectacle meant real business was sometimes just a backdrop. The challenges selling lemonade, designing products, organizing events were entertaining, but hardly the high-stakes deals Trump claimed to excel at in real life. Many contestants later described how producers guided conversations and dramatized conflicts. The business competition was, in many ways, a reality TV soap opera with Trump as its central figure, building a brand beyond real estate. The success of The Apprentice gave Trump more than just fame, it gave him an entire media empire. He parlayed his TV popularity into licensing deals for branded products, Trump Steaks, Trump Water, Trump University, which would later lead to lawsuits, and even Trump-branded ties and cologne. Each carried his signature style of luxury and excess. This brand explosion reinforced the image of Trump as a businessman whose name alone was a guarantee of quality and success regardless of the actual business outcomes. He was no longer just a developer, he was a walking billboard. Starting the soundbite. Trump's TV success also came from his uncanny ability to deliver memorable soundbites. He mastered the art of the provocative quote, short, sharp, and repeatable. "You're fired" was the catchiest, but others like, "I have a great relationship with the blacks," a controversial remark from a later interview, or "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose voters," became part of the public discourse. These statements often defied logic or fact-checking, but made for great headlines and social media fodder. His supporters saw blunt honesty. Critics saw reckless arrogance. Either way, Trump controlled the conversation. Behind the curtain, financial reality. Despite his TV success, Trump's underlying business reality was far less glamorous. The early 2000s brought more financial challenges. His Atlantic City casinos were hemorrhaging money, and his real estate ventures were often propped up by loans from Deutsche Bank and other creditors. The myth of the dealmaker obscured the fact that many of his businesses depended on complex financial engineering, government subsidies, and favorable bank arrangements. He was often bailed out by creditors who took risks on his brand, even as his actual business fundamentals were shaky. The power of perception. What The Apprentice did best was blur the line between image and reality. Millions watched Trump play the CEO on TV, and many accepted that persona as true. He was the boss America wanted, tough, decisive, unapologetic. Yet the real Donald Trump was more complicated, a businessman whose empire was as fragile as it was flashy. Launching a political career. The TV spotlight also gave Trump political capital. He hosted fundraisers, mingled with politicians, and became a familiar face in conservative circles. By 2011, speculation swirled about a potential presidential run. Trump had the name recognition, the media savvy, and the loyal following. And he knew how to dominate headlines, a new kind of deal. Trump's time on television taught him that politics, like business, was about branding and negotiation. He understood how to spin narratives, deflect criticism, and energize a base of supporters. His deal-making shifted from boardrooms to rallies and news cycles. The myth he crafted on The Apprentice was about to be tested on the national stage. He wasn't supposed to win, so he broke the rules. Long before Donald Trump announced his run for president in 2015, he was already laying the groundwork not in political circles but on television, in tabloids, and most importantly, on Twitter. The birther movement, planting seeds of doubt. One of the earliest and most infamous political attacks Trump launched was the birther conspiracy theory against Barack Obama. Despite overwhelming evidence that Obama was born in Hawaii and was fully eligible to be president. Trump persistently questioned the legitimacy of Obama's birth certificate. In 2011, during a time when Obama's popularity was high and conservative opposition was seeking new strategies, Trump seized the moment. He appeared on shows, gave interviews, and tweeted conspiratorial claims suggesting Obama was a phony and a fraud. This move was strategic. It energized a segment of the conservative base who were skeptical of Obama's presidency and hungry for a cause. More than a conspiracy, it was a calculated smear campaign designed to undermine the sitting president's credibility. Twitter, Trump's unfiltered megaphone. Trump's rise as a political figure was inseparable from his use of Twitter, a platform that was still relatively new and underutilized by politicians in the early 2010s. Unlike traditional politicians who carefully crafted messages through press releases and speeches, Trump spoke directly to millions of followers with raw, unfiltered tweets. His style was blunt, often provocative, and occasionally reckless. He attacked rivals, the media, and even allies in real time, setting the news cycle instead of following it. Twitter became his weapon of choice to bypass traditional media gatekeepers and connect directly with his audience. The power of provocation. By tweeting controversial statements, Trump dominated headlines. From mocking political figures to making outrageous claims, his Twitter feed was a constant stream of spectacle. Each tweet sparked reactions, both outrage and fervent support. This relentless barrage created a sense of unpredictability that kept the public and media glued to his every word. For Trump, Twitter wasn't just communication. It was a performance stage and a political tool. Early political signals. In 2013 and 2014, Trump began to hint more openly at political ambitions. He criticized the Obama administration's policies, including the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, immigration reform, and foreign policy decisions. He also cultivated relationships with conservative media outlets and commentators, building his credibility within Republican circles. Yet many in the political establishment dismissed him as a reality TV star, making noise without serious intent. The 2015 announcement breaking the mold. On June 16, 2015, Trump officially announced his candidacy for president at Trump Tower in New York City. His speech was blunt, controversial, and defiant. He painted a picture of a country in crisis, rampant immigration, economic decline, and weak leadership. He promised to make America great again, a slogan that quickly became synonymous with his campaign. The announcement shocked the political world. Many expected his campaign to fizzle quickly under the weight of traditional politics and scrutiny. But Trump thrived on the chaos, breaking political conventions. Trump's campaign style defied norms. He eschewed typical political language, speaking in simple, direct phrases. He attacked opponents with brutal nicknames, Crooked Hillary, Lion Ted, and Little Marco. He held rallies that blended entertainment and political speech, drawing massive crowds. He used social media like no candidate before him, shaping his narrative minute by minute. Media frenzy and polarization. The media initially treated Trump as a sideshow. His outrageous statements and gaffes were fodder for mockery. But as his polling numbers rose, coverage intensified. Trump's ability to dominate the news cycle, whether through tweets or rally soundbites, forced everyone to pay attention. He polarized the electorate. His supporters saw him as a truth-teller, shaking up a broken system. His critics saw him as a dangerous demagogue. The role of social media in the campaign. Social media platforms amplified Trump's message far beyond traditional channels. His campaign mastered targeting specific voter groups with tailored digital ads and viral content. Trump's Twitter account became a direct line to millions, bypassing journalists and allowing him to define issues on his terms. This new mode of campaigning was disruptive and unprecedented. Challenges and controversies. From the start, Trump's campaign was marred by controversies. His comments on Mexican immigrants as rapists sparked outrage and condemnations. He faced backlash for his stance on Muslims, proposing a temporary ban on Muslim immigration, a move that many saw as discriminatory. But these controversies often boosted his visibility and galvanized his base. They reinforced his outsider image as a candidate willing to say what others wouldn't. The Republican primary battle. Trump's entry into the race reshaped the Republican primary. He faced a crowded field of experienced politicians. But his unconventional approach attracted attention and support. He won primaries and caucuses by energizing voters who felt ignored by the establishment. His rise challenged the GOP's traditional power brokers and ideological gatekeepers, foreshadowing a political earthquake. As the campaign progressed, it became clear that Trump was no ordinary candidate. He harnessed anger, economic anxiety, and cultural divisions in ways few politicians had before. His combination of media savvy, provocative rhetoric, and relentless campaigning created a new kind of political force. No one could predict exactly where it would lead, but the ground was shifting beneath American politics. The 2016 campaign, shaking the foundations. The 2016 presidential race quickly became one of the most contentious and unpredictable in American history. Trump's campaign was marked by relentless media coverage, constant controversy, and a fervent base of supporters who believed he was the candidate to disrupt the status quo. While political analysts initially dismissed Trump's chances, his insurgent campaign steadily gained momentum. He spoke directly to voters frustrated with economic stagnation, immigration policies, and the perceived failures of Washington elites. Scandals and soundbites. Trump's campaign was never short on headlines. Controversies seemed to follow him daily, yet they rarely slowed his rise. The release of the infamous Access Hollywood tape in October 2016, where Trump bragged about grabbing women inappropriately, could have ended many political careers. Instead, Trump's supporters largely dismissed it as locker room talk, while he doubled down, denying any wrongdoing and attacking the media. Earlier, he faced accusations of sexual misconduct from multiple women, which he vehemently denied, calling the claims politically motivated. Despite these scandals, Trump's ability to command the media spotlight kept him at the center of the national conversation. The Comey letter and the election's final stretch. In late October, just days before the election, FBI Director James Comey sent a letter to Congress announcing the reopening of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. This unexpected development reignited scrutiny of Clinton's campaign and sowed doubt among undecided voters. Trump capitalized on the chaos, painting himself as the candidate of law and order against a corrupt establishment. The letter's timing and impact remain debated, but it undeniably added to the unpredictability of the final days of the campaign. An outsider victory. Despite predictions and polls favoring Clinton, Trump won a stunning Electoral College victory on November 8, 2016. He flipped key battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania states that had long been Democratic strongholds. The win shocked political insiders, journalists, and much of the global community. Trump's victory was a seismic shift, signaling deep divides in American society. The campaign legacy. Trump's 2016 campaign reshaped American politics in several ways. Breaking political norms. His disregard for traditional campaign etiquette and messaging created a new template for political insurgency. Media strategy. His mastery of social media and headline-grabbing stunts demonstrated the power of direct communication with voters. Polarization. The campaign deepened cultural and political divides, energizing both supporters and opponents. Questioning the system. Trump's outsider status and attacks on the swamp resonated with voters tired of perceived government corruption and elitism. The election even believed. They laughed. And then they watched him take the oath. At the start of the 2016 campaign, no one in the political establishment believed Donald J. Trump would become president. He was a sideshow, a celebrity real estate mogul with a golden elevator and a history of bankruptcies. The media treated him like a novelty. His opponents treated him like a joke. But behind the punchlines was something real, a movement. Trump didn't campaign like a politician because he wasn't one. He campaigned like a brand. While other candidates fine-tuned policy platforms, Trump fed his audience a steady stream of emotional slogans. Build the wall. Drain the swamp. Make America great again. Each phrase was a simple, sharp-edged hook, perfect for rally chants, red hats, and viral tweets. He didn't play by the rules because he didn't see rules as real. They were for politicians, not for someone who'd fired people on TV and made deals in marble towers. The more he broke norms, the more his support solidified. Every time pundits declared his latest outrage a fatal blow, his poll numbers ticked up. The usual laws of political gravity didn't apply. The primary battlefield. Trump entered a crowded Republican field. 16 candidates, most of them polished, well-funded, and ideologically seasoned. Governors, senators, political veterans. Trump bulldozed through them. He mocked Jeb Bush for being low energy, reduced Marco Rubio to Little Marco, and labeled Ted Cruz Lion Ted. Each nickname stuck. Each jab was a headline. His opponents couldn't keep up. They tried to hit him on his contradictions, his business record, his temperament. But Trump wasn't building a case based on consistency. He was building a story, a spectacle. By mid-2016, the Republican nomination was his. Clinton versus Trump. The contrast. The general election pitted him against Hillary Clinton, a political dynasty in a pantsuit. Clinton was experienced, disciplined, and connected. But she also represented everything Trump voters hated: establishment politics, cautious rhetoric, and the status quo. Clinton campaigned on policy. Trump campaigned on disruption. And it worked. His rallies were raucous, carnivalesque arenas of anger and devotion. Clinton held town halls and fundraisers. Trump sold out stadiums and gave the press a full-time job fact-checking his every sentence. But fact checks didn't matter. His supporters didn't care if he lied. They believed he told a bigger truth.
that America was rigged, broken, and needed a man like him to break it open.
The scandals pile up. The campaign was a trench war of scandals. Trump faced accusations of racism, sexism, and fraud. His defunct Trump University became a punching bag. So did the Trump Foundation, under investigation for misusing funds. He called for a Muslim travel ban. He questioned a judge's impartiality because of his Mexican heritage. He attacked a Gold Star family. Then came the Access Hollywood tape. In October 2016, the Washington Post released a 2005 recording of Trump bragging about sexually assaulting women. "When you're a star, they let you do it," he said. "Grab 'em by the It was explosive. Republicans distanced themselves. Pundits pronounced his campaign dead. But Trump did what he always did: deny, deflect, double down. He held a press conference with women who had accused Bill Clinton of sexual misconduct. He turned his own scandal into an attack on his opponent. The news cycle reset, and he marched on. In debates, Trump interrupted constantly, loomed behind Clinton as she spoke, and threw red meat to his base with phrases like "nasty woman" and promises to jail her if elected. His performance was brash, chaotic, and mesmerizing. For many, horrifying. For his supporters, electrifying. Emails and October surprises. While Trump weathered scandals, Clinton was dragged by one long saga, her private email server. Throughout the campaign, the issue loomed. It fed into suspicions of secrecy, corruption, and entitlement. The FBI had investigated and closed the case in July. But then, with just 11 days to go, James Comey sent a letter to Congress. New emails had been discovered, Comey said, on the laptop of Anthony Weiner, the disgraced husband of Clinton aide Huma Abedin. The FBI was reopening the case. The headlines exploded. Trump seized on the story, declaring the system rigged and Clinton corrupt. "This is bigger than Watergate," he claimed. Cable news looped footage of Clinton looking rattled. Social media was flooded with conspiracy theories. Trump hammered the story at rallies, claiming the Clinton crime family was being exposed. A week later, Comey announced the emails contained nothing new. The case was closed again. But the damage was done. Clinton's poll numbers slipped. The narrative had changed. Election night, the shock. On November 8, 2016, America voted. Polls predicted a Clinton win. Most media outlets gave her a 70% to 90% chance. But as the night unfolded, the map turned red in places Democrats had long counted on: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. By midnight, it was clear. Donald Trump had done the impossible. He had won the Electoral College and the presidency. The nation was stunned. He had lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million. But the victory was decisive where it counted. Rural counties turned out in force. Suburban voters broke Republican. The so-called silent majority roared. Pundits scrambled for explanations. Had the polls been wrong? Had Clinton misread the country? Was this a backlash against Obama? A revolt against globalization? The answers were complex. But one thing was undeniable. Trump had connected with a vast portion of the electorate who felt unseen and unheard. The aftermath. The morning after, half the country celebrated, the other half mourned. Trump had won by breaking the rules, the molds, and the predictions. His election was a rupture, not just politically, but culturally. He wasn't supposed to win. He wasn't supposed to survive the scandals. He wasn't supposed to beat Clinton. But he did. As his supporters chanted "lock her up," he stepped into the presidency with no military experience, no political experience, and no intention of playing by the old rule book. And on January 20th, 2017, as he raised his hand and took the oath of office, the world watched the punchline become the president. He gripped the podium, looked out over the crowd, and declared, "This American carnage stops right here and stops right now." It was a new era. The reality show had become reality. President of spectacle, he didn't govern, he performed. Donald J. Trump took the oath of office on January 20th, 2017, under a gray D.C. sky, promising to end American carnage. The phrase was apocalyptic, theatrical, and perfectly Trump. It wasn't just a speech, it was a signal. His presidency wouldn't be about policy papers or coalition building. It would be a show, chaotic, polarizing, and impossible to ignore. The first 2 years, 2017 and 2018, set the tone. A whirlwind of executive orders, Twitter feuds, and global provocations. From the Muslim ban to Charlottesville to taunting North Korea's dictator, Trump didn't just occupy the White House, he turned it into a stage. The opening act, chaos as strategy. Trump's transition into the presidency was less a handover than a hostile takeover. He arrived with no government experience, a skeletal team, and a distrust of the deep state, a term he wielded to describe anyone from bureaucrats to intelligence officials who didn't bend to his will. His inner circle was a mix of loyalists, family members, and opportunists. Steve Bannon, the Breitbart mastermind pushing nationalist populism, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law with a portfolio as sprawling as his ambition, and Sean Spicer, the press secretary whose combative briefings became must-watch TV. The White House leaked like a sieve. Aides fought for access, influence, and survival. Policy decisions often seemed driven by whoever got Trump's ear last or what he'd seen on Fox News that morning. He governed by impulse, tweeting edicts at odd hours, blindsiding his own staff. The chaos wasn't a bug, it was the feature. It kept everyone allies, enemies, the media off balance. Trump's supporters loved it. They hadn't elected a manager, they'd elected a wrecking ball. To them, the dysfunction was proof he was shaking up a rotten system. To critics, it was reckless. A reality star playing president with real-world stakes. The Muslim ban, Executive Order 13769. Days after inauguration, Trump signed Executive Order 13769, banning travel from 7 Muslim-majority countries: Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Officially, it was about national security, protecting America from terrorism. Unofficially, it was the Muslim ban he'd promised on the campaign trail. The rollout was a mess. No one, not Customs and Border Protection, not the State Department, was fully prepped. Airports descended into chaos. Families were detained. Protesters flooded terminals chanting, "Let them in." The courts pounced. Judges blocked the order, citing constitutional violations and religious discrimination. Trump raged on Twitter, calling the judiciary so-called judges and vowing to fight. His team scrambled to revise the ban, issuing new versions to skirt legal challenges. By June 2018, a watered-down version reached the Supreme Court, which upheld it 5-4. Trump declared victory, but the damage was done. The ban had galvanized his base, alienated allies, and painted a target on Muslim Americans. To his supporters, it was a bold move to keep America safe. To opponents, it was xenophobia dressed up as policy. Either way, it was pure Trump. Divisive, attention-grabbing, and designed to dominate the news cycle. Charlottesville, the moral fault line. If the Muslim ban showed Trump's willingness to provoke, Charlottesville exposed the limits of his moral compass. On August 11th, 2017, white supremacists and neo-Nazis descended on Charlottesville, Virginia, for a Unite the Right rally to protest the removal of a Confederate statue. Carrying torches and chanting, "Jews will not replace us," they clashed with the counter-protesters. On the second day, a neo-ohm drove his car into a crowd, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer and injuring dozens. The nation waited for the president to condemn the hate. He didn't. Instead, Trump equivocated. In a press conference at Trump Tower, he said there were very fine people on both sides and blamed alt-left counter-protesters for the violence. The remarks stunned even some Republicans. CEOs abandoned his business councils. Allies like Gary Cohn, his economic advisor, considered resigning. The backlash was swift. But Trump doubled down, insisting he was being fair. Charlottesville became a turning point. It crystallized Trump's refusal to disavow certain moderates, even when their actions were indefensible. His base didn't blink. They saw it as defiance against political correctness. But for much of America, it was a president winking at bigotry. The incident deepened the country's racial and cultural divide, with Trump as the fault line. Polls showed his approval rating dipping to 35%, though his core supporters remained unshaken. Munsing-Teo, North Korea, fire and fury. While domestic controversies piled up, Trump turned his showmanship to the world stage, zeroing in on North Korea. Kim Jong-un, the secretive dictator with a penchant for missile tests, was the ideal adversary, unpredictable, theatrical, and nuclear-armed. Trump dubbed him Little Rocket Man and mocked his regime at the United Nations, saying is on a suicide mission. Kim fired back, calling Trump a mentally deranged U.S. dotard. It was geopolitics as reality TV. In August 2017, as North Korea tested missiles capable of reaching Hawaii, Trump warned of fire and fury like the world has never seen before. The phrase, delivered off the cuff at his Bedminster Golf Club, sent shockwaves. Was he bluffing? Planning war? Nobody knew, not even his advisors, apparently. The Pentagon and State Department scrambled to clarify, but Trump kept escalating. In a speech to the UN General Assembly, he said he'd totally destroy North Korea if forced to act. The brinkmanship terrified allies. South Korea and Japan, within Kim's missile range, urged restraint. Critics warned Trump's rhetoric could spark miscalculation, but his supporters saw it as strength, the president standing up to a rogue regime. By mid-2018, the script flipped. Trump announced he'd meet Kim in Singapore, the first U.S. president to sit with a North Korean leader. The June 2018 summit was light on substance-vague promises of denuclearization, but heavy on optics. Trump and Kim shook hands, traded smiles, and starred in a propaganda video Kim could have scripted himself. The summit produced no lasting breakthrough. North Korea kept its nukes, but Trump claimed it as a win, tweeting, "There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea." His base cheered. Diplomats cringed. The episode captured Trump's foreign policy, bold, erratic, and more about perception than results. The Twitter presidency. Underpinning the chaos was Trump's Twitter account, @RealDonaldTrump. It wasn't just a communication tool, it was a weapon. He used it to announce policies, fire aids, and attack enemies often before his own team knew what was coming. A single tweet could tank markets, spark diplomatic crises, or bury a news cycle. In 2017 alone, he tweeted over 2,500 times, averaging 7 a day. Some were boasts, the best economy in decades. Others were taunts, crooked Hillary is at it again. Many were false PolitiFact, rated 69% of his claims as mostly false or worse. The media couldn't look away. Every tweet was dissected, debated, fact-checked. Critics called it unpresidential. Supporters called it authentic. Either way, it let Trump bypass traditional gatekeepers, press, party, even his own staff, to speak directly to millions. It was the ultimate reality show, with the president as producer, star, and troll-in-chief. The policy flashpoints. Amid the spectacle, Trump did govern, sort of. In 2017, he signed a tax cut bill, slashing corporate rates and delivering a win for Republicans. He rolled back Obama-era regulations, from environmental protections to net neutrality. He appointed conservative judges at a record pace, reshaping the judiciary. But these were often overshadowed by his stunts. A government shutdown in January 2018, sparked by fights over immigration, lasted 3 days, until Trump's demand for a border wall, a campaign staple, went nowhere despite Republican control of Congress. His administration churned through staff. Spicer was out by July 2017, replaced by Anthony Scaramucci, who lasted 11 days. Bannon was gone by August. Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, was replaced by John Kelly, who struggled to impose order. Firings were announced via tweet, resignations via leak. The turnover was unprecedented, a revolving door of egos and agendas. The spectacle's toll. By the end of 2018, Trump's presidency had redefined political gravity. His approval rating hovered around 40%, low but steady. His base, rural voters, working-class whites, evangelicals remained loyal, thrilled by his defiance. But the chaos alienated moderates and energized Democrats, who flipped the House in the 2018 midterms, gaining 40 seats. It was a rebuke, but Trump spun it as a tremendous success for Republicans holding the Senate. The world adjusted to the Trump show. Allies like Canada and Germany braced for tariff threats. Adversaries like Russia and China exploited the unpredictability. At home, the culture wars intensified. Every issue, immigration, race, trade, became a proxy for the larger fight over what America should be. Trump didn't care about the long game. He thrived on the moment, the rally, the tweet, the headline. He wasn't building a legacy. He was staging a performance. And the audience, love him or hate him, couldn't change the channel. On December 31st, 2018, as the year closed, Trump tweeted, "2018 was a great year for America. We are winning." The economy was strong, ISIS was weakened, and his judges were on the bench. But the shutdown dragged on. The Mueller investigation loomed, and the country was more divided than ever. He stood at the center of it all, grinning, unbowed, and ready for the next act. The presidency wasn't a job. It was his greatest deal, yet a chance to remake reality in his image, and he was just getting started. Impeached, acquitted, repeat. No rules, no breaks, just ratings. By 2019, Donald Trump's presidency was a high-wire act, teetering between triumph and scandal. He thrived on the edge, where chaos fueled his brand and kept opponents scrambling. But the tightrope was narrowing. The Mueller investigation, probing Russian interference in the 2016 election, loomed like a storm cloud. Then came Ukraine, a scandal that would lead to his first impeachment. Through it all, Trump turned the machinery of government into a stage for his greatest performance yet. The embattled showman, defying the system, acquitted by loyalists, and rewriting the rules of accountability. It was a spectacle of defiance, and the ratings, love him or hate him, were through the roof. Oh, actor, the Mueller shadow. The Mueller investigation began in May 2017, when special counsel Robert Mueller was appointed to investigate Russia's role in the 2016 election and any ties to Trump's campaign. For 2 years, it hung over the White House like a guillotine. Trump called it a witch hunt, a hoax, and a deep state conspiracy. He tweeted about it obsessively over 1,100 times, by the investigation's end denouncing Mueller, the FBI, and anyone tied to the probe. His base ate it up, seeing the investigation as proof of an elite plot to oust their champion. Mueller's team worked methodically, indicting 34 people, including Trump associates like Paul Manafort, his campaign chairman, and Michael Flynn, his first national security advisor. Manafort was convicted of fraud. Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. The probe uncovered Russia's sweeping efforts to sway the election, hacking Democratic emails, spreading disinformation on social media, and contacting Trump campaign aides. But the question everyone waited for was whether Trump himself had conspired with Russia. In March 2019, Mueller delivered his report. It was a 448-page bombshell that didn't quite detonate. The report detailed 10 instances of possible obstruction of justice by Trump firing FBI Director James Comey, pressuring aides to shut down the probe but stop short of charging him, citing Justice Department policy against indicting a sitting president. On collusion, it found no conclusive evidence of a criminal conspiracy between Trump's campaign and Russia, though it noted numerous links and welcoming of Russian help. Trump spun it as a win. No collusion, no obstruction, complete and total exoneration, he tweeted. His Attorney General, William Barr, amplified the narrative, releasing a 4-page summary that downplayed the report's nuances. The full document, when released weeks later, painted a murkier picture. But the news cycle had moved on. Mueller testified before Congress in July 2019, looking weary and restrained, refusing to deliver the sound bites Democrats wanted. The investigation faded. Not with a bang, but a whimper. Trump emerged unscathed, emboldened, and ready for the next fight. The Ukraine scandal unfolds. As Mueller receded, a new scandal erupted, one that would define Trump's presidency. In July 2019, Trump called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a former comedian turned a wartime leader. The call was meant to be routine, but Trump had other plans. He pressed Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden, his likely 2020 rival, and Biden's son Hunter, who had sat on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma. Trump also pushed for dirt on a debunked theory about Ukrainian interference in the 2016 election. The leverage? Nearly $400 million in U.S. military aid to Ukraine, which was fighting Russian-backed separatists. Trump had frozen the aid, a move that baffled his own advisors. "I would like you to do us a favor, though," Trump said on the call, according to a rough transcript later released by the White House. The implication was clear: dig up dirt or the aid stays locked. A whistleblower, a CIA officer with access to the call, filed a complaint in August 2019, alleging Trump was using his office to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 election. The complaint, detailed and damning, landed like a grenade in Washington. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who had resisted impeachment calls over Mueller, now saw no choice. On September 24, 2019, she announced a formal impeachment inquiry. Trump didn't flinch. He called the whistleblower a spy and suggested they deserve punishment. He tweeted, "This is nothing more than a continuation of the greatest and most destructive witch hunt of all time." His defenders, led by loyalists like Rudy Giuliani, his personal attorney, claimed the call was perfect and the aid freeze routine. But the evidence piled up. Text messages between diplomats showed they knew the deal, investigations for aid. Witnesses, including Ambassador Gordon Sondland, confirmed the quid pro quo in congressional testimony. The House investigation moved at lightning speed. Democrats, now controlling the chamber, held hearings that dominated cable news. Witnesses like Marie Yovanovitch, the ousted U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, and Fiona Hill, a Russia expert, testified about Trump's pressure campaign. Trump's response was vintage. He attacked witnesses on Twitter, calling them never-Trumpers and human scum. He held rallies, framing the inquiry as a coup. His base rallied, unfazed by the details. Impeachment, the House votes. On December 18, 2019, the House impeached Trump on 2 articles: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The vote was almost entirely along party lines: 230, 197 for abuse, 229, 198 for obstruction. No Republicans supported it. 2 Democrats broke ranks to vote no. Trump became the 3rd president in U.S. history to be impeached, after Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. The articles accused Trump of abusing his office by pressuring Ukraine for personal gain and stonewalling Congress by blocking witnesses and documents. Democrats called it a clear betrayal of the Constitution. Republicans called it a partisan sham, arguing the evidence was circumstantial and the process rushed. Trump predictably called it presidential harassment. The trial shifted to the Senate, where Republicans held a 53-47 majority. Conviction required a 2/3 vote, 67 senators an impossible bar given GOP loyalty. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell coordinated closely with the White House, vowing a swift trial. Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, demanded witnesses like John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, who had hinted at damning knowledge. McConnell refused. The Senate trial, a foregone conclusion. The Senate trial began on January 16, 2020, with Chief Justice John Roberts presiding. Trump's defense team, including Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr, argued he'd done nothing wrong. They claimed the Ukraine call was about rooting out corruption, not election meddling, and that impeachment was a dangerous overreach. Democrats, led by House managers like Adam Schiff, presented a meticulous case using video clips, texts, and testimony to show Trump's scheme. The trial was less a legal proceeding than a political theater. Senators sat through hours of arguments, but many had already made up their minds. Trump didn't testify. He rarely sat still for questions, but his tweets filled the void, blasting Democrats and praising Republicans. The public watched, divided as ever. Polls showed 51% of Americans wanted Trump removed, but his base remained rock solid, with 90% of Republicans approving his performance. The witness fight was the trial's flashpoint. Bolton's forthcoming book, leaked during the trial, alleged that Trump explicitly tied the aid to investigations. Democrats seized on it, demanding his testimony. A few Republicans, like Mitt Romney and Susan Collins, wavered, but the party held firm. On January 31st, the Senate voted 51-49 against calling witnesses, ensuring a quick end. On February 5, 2020, the Senate acquitted Trump. The vote was 52-48 on abuse of power, with Romney, the lone Republican, voting to convict. On obstruction, it was 53-47, straight party lines. Trump was free, his presidency intact. He celebrated with a White House speech, holding up a newspaper headline, "Trump acquitted." He called the impeachment a disgrace and thanked his defenders, naming them like Oscar winners. The aftermath. Stronger than ever? Impeachment didn't humble Trump, it emboldened him. He purged his administration of perceived disloyalists, firing Yovanovitch, Sondland, and others. He leaned harder into his narrative of victimhood, telling rally crowds the system was rigged against him and them. His approval rating hit 49%, the highest of his presidency, driven by a unified GOP and a roaring economy. But the victory was fleeting. The Ukraine scandal deepened distrust in institutions, and Democrats, galvanized, prepared for the 2020 election. Trump's acquittal McConnell didn't erase the facts. He'd leveraged U.S. power for personal gain, and the Senate had let him. The episode exposed a presidency unbound by norms, fueled by loyalty, and immune to consequences. Trump moved on, tweeting, "We will win big in 2020. But the stage was set for bigger battles, a pandemic, a reckoning on race, and an election that would test the country's limits. Impeachment was just another episode in the Trump show high drama, no resolution, and a cliffhanger ending. The big lie. He lost, then told 70 million people he didn't. Donald Trump's presidency thrived on defiance, but in 2020 it faced its ultimate test. The year brought a global pandemic, racial unrest, and a bitter election against Joe Biden. Trump lost, but he refused to concede. Instead, he spun a narrative so potent it reshaped reality for millions. The election was stolen. The big lie, as it came to be called, wasn't just a claim, it was a movement. It fueled lawsuits, rallied his base, and set the stage for January 6, 2021, a day that would scar American democracy. Through relentless denial, legal gambits, and a second impeachment, Trump turned defeat into a spectacle of grievance, proving once again that facts were no match for faith. The 2020 election, a nation on edge. The 2020 campaign unfolded in a country battered by COVID-19, economic turmoil, and protests over George Floyd's killing. Trump leaned into his brand, outsider, fighter, disruptor. He held packed rallies, downplaying the virus and promising a return to greatness. Joe Biden, campaigning from his Delaware basement, offered calm and competence, a stark contrast to Trump's chaos. Polls showed Biden leading, but Trump's base was unshaken. His rallies drew thousands, chanting, "4 more years." He attacked mail-in voting, newly expanded due to the pandemic, as a recipe for fraud. "The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged," he said in August. The groundwork was laid. On November 3, 2020, America voted. Early results favored Trump as in-person votes were counted first. But as mail-in ballots, overwhelmingly Democratic, rolled in, the map shifted. By November 7th, the Associated Press called the race for Biden, 306 electoral votes to Trump's 232. Biden also won the popular vote by over 7 million, a 4.5% margin. Trump refused to accept it. "This election is far from over," he tweeted. He claimed fraud, stolen ballots, and a conspiracy involving Democrats, the media, and even Republicans. His supporters believed him. Polls later showed 70% of Republicans thought the election was illegitimate. The big lie was born, the lawsuit frenzy. Trump's team launched a legal blitz to overturn the results. Over 60 lawsuits were filed in battleground states Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, alleging everything from voter fraud to faulty voting machines. Rudy Giuliani, now Trump's lead attorney, became the face of the effort, holding press conferences at bizarre venues like a Philadelphia landscaping company. Sidney Powell, another lawyer, pushed wild conspiracies about Venezuelan software rigging the vote. The lawsuits flopped. Judges, including Trump appointees, dismissed them for lack of evidence. In Pennsylvania, a federal judge called one case a Frankenstein's monster of baseless claims. In Georgia, officials recounted votes 3 times, confirming Biden's win. Dominion Voting Systems, targeted by Powell's claims, later sued her for defamation. By December, the legal path was exhausted. The Electoral College certified Biden's victory on December 14th. But Trump didn't stop. He leaned on allies to keep fighting. In Georgia, he called Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger on January 2, 2021, pressuring him to find 11,780 votes, the exact number needed to flip the state. Raffensperger, a Republican, refused and released the call's audio. It was a bombshell, but Trump's base saw it as proof of his fight, not wrongdoing. The setup, rallying the faithful. As legal defeats mounted, Trump turned to his strongest weapon, his supporters. He amplified the big lie through tweets, rallies, and friendly media like Fox News and OAN. Stop the Steal became a rallying cry, spreading across social media and bumper stickers. Militia groups like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, already energized by Trump's rhetoric, began organizing. The stage was set for January 6, 2021, when Congress would certify the Electoral College vote. Trump and his allies planned a Save America rally in Washington, D.C. to pressure lawmakers. He tweeted on December 19th, "Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there, we'll be wild." Far-right groups took it as a call to action, plotting online to storm the Capitol. Trump's inner circle, including Giuliani and John Eastman, pushed a scheme to have Vice President Mike Pence reject electoral votes, a legally dubious plan Pence resisted. The rhetoric escalated. At a Georgia rally on January 4th, Trump repeated false claims of fraud, saying, "We're going to take it back." Giuliani called for trial by combat. The crowd was primed, believing the election was stolen, and only they could stop it. January 6th, the insurrection. On the morning of January 6th, thousands gathered at the Ellipse near the White House for the Save America rally. The crowd was a mix. MAGA loyalists in red hats, Guanan Baladas, militia members in tactical gear. Trump took the stage, delivering a 70-minute speech that was both grievance and battle cry. "We will never give up. We will never concede," he said. "We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to fight like hell." The crowd marched. By 1 p.m., they reached the Capitol, where Congress was in session. Barriers fell quickly. Rioters, some armed with pipes, bear spray, and zip ties, overwhelmed Capitol Police. They smashed windows, breached doors, and stormed the building. Lawmakers fled as rioters chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," and hunted for Speaker Nancy Pelosi. A makeshift gallows stood outside. Ashley Babbitt, a Trump supporter, was shot dead by police while climbing through a broken window. 4 other deaths followed, 3 from medical emergencies, 1 an officer crushed in a door. Inside, rioters defaced offices, stole laptops, and posed for selfies. Confederate flags waved in the halls, a symbol unseen in the Capitol since the Civil War. It took hours for National Guard reinforcements to arrive, delayed by bureaucratic chaos and Trump's reluctance to act. He watched the attack on TV, reportedly pleased at first, before tweeting a tepid call for peace. "Stay peaceful." Later, he released a video saying, "We love you, you're very special," while repeating fraud claims. By 6 p.m., the Capitol was cleared. Congress reconvened that night, shaken but defiant, and certified Biden's win by early morning. The attack left 5 dead, over 140 injured, and a nation stunned. It wasn't just a riot, it was an assault on democracy, fueled by the big lie. The aftermath. A nation divided. The fallout was immediate and seismic. Images of the Capitol under siege, broken glass, bloodied officers, a rioter in a Viking helmet dominated global headlines. Trump's allies distanced themselves. Pence, who had faced death threats, was furious. Mitch McConnell called the rioters thugs and blamed Trump's provocative lies. Even Fox News hosts criticized him. Social media platforms acted swiftly. Twitter banned Trump on January 8th, citing risk of further incitement. Facebook and YouTube followed. His digital megaphone, which had defined his presidency, was silenced. Polls showed 56% of Americans wanted him held accountable, though 80% of Republicans still supported him. Trump left office on January 20th, 2021, skipping Biden's inauguration, the first outgoing president to do so since 1869. He flew to Mar-a-Lago defiant, promising, "We will be back in some form." The big lie, though, didn't leave with him. It took root, with 30% of Americans believing the election was stolen per polls. Republican state legislatures pushed voter restriction laws, citing fraud. The GOP, once critical, realigned behind Trump, purging dissenters like Liz Cheney, who condemned his role in January 6th, the second impeachment. On January 13th, 2021, the House impeached Trump again, charging him with incitement of insurrection. The vote was 232-197, with 10 Republicans joining Democrats, a historic break. The article cited his January 6th speech, his months of fraud claims, and his failure to stop the attack. It was a faster, more focused process than the Ukraine impeachment, driven by raw anger over the Capitol siege. The Senate trial began on February 9th after Trump left office, raising questions about its constitutionality. Democrats argued it was necessary to hold him accountable and bar him from future office. House managers, led by Jamie Raskin, presented chilling footage of the attack, showing rioters inches from lawmakers. They linked Trump's words directly to the violence, quoting his calls to fight like hell. Trump's defense, led by new lawyers after his first team quit, called the trial a partisan vendetta. They argued his speech was protected free speech and the rioters acted independently. The Senate, still 50-50 with Vice President Kamala Harris as tiebreaker, needed 67 votes to convict. It fell short. On February 13th, the vote was 57-43, with 7 Republicans, Romney, Collins, Murkowski, Sassy, Toomey, Burr, Cassidy, voting guilty. It was the most bipartisan impeachment vote in history, but not enough. Trump was acquitted again. He called it a vindication and vowed to continue his movement. Democrats warned the acquittal set a dangerous precedent, letting future presidents incite violence without consequence. The trial exposed the GOP's bind. Trump's grip on the base was ironclad, making dissent political suicide. The legacy of the lie. The big lie didn't end on January 6th. It became a litmus test for the GOP. Candidates embraced it to win primaries. Election officials faced death threats. The Capitol attack led to over 1,200 arrests by 2025, with 700 convictions. But the broader damage lingered. Trust in elections plummeted. Political violence, once unthinkable, fell closer. Trump, exiled from power, remained the GOP's kingmaker, his narrative of a stolen election fueling his 2024 comeback. January 6th wasn't the end of Trump's story, it was a pivot. He'd lost the presidency, but gained a myth. The man who'd built a brand on winning had turned defeat into a cause. And millions believed him, ready to follow wherever the show led next. Exile and resurrection. They said he was finished. He never heard them. When Donald Trump left the White House on January 20th, 2021, he didn't slink away. He boarded Air Force One, flew to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, and began rewriting his story. The Capitol riot, his second impeachment, and his social media bans had left him bloodied but unbowed. Pundits called him a pariah, predicting political oblivion. But Trump had other plans. From his gilded Palm Beach club, he rebuilt his influence, launched a new platform called Truth Social, and shaped the 2022 midterms with endorsements that cemented his grip on the Republican Party. This was no retirement. It was a resurrection, fueled by grievance, loyalty, and an unshakable belief in his own comeback. Mar-a-Lago, the ex-president's court. Mar-a-Lago, Trump's sprawling oceanfront estate, became his post-presidency headquarters. The 126-room mansion, with its gold chandeliers and manicured lawns, was less a home than a stage. He held court in the dining room, surrounded by MAGA faithful, GOP operatives, and curious billionaires. Guests paid thousands for memberships to rub elbows with the former president, who greeted them in red hats or golf shirts, always ready with a quip or a complaint about the rigged 2020 election. The resort was a bubble where Trump's reality held sway. He hosted fundraisers, wedding receptions, and political strategy sessions, blending business, showmanship, and revenge. Aides like Stephen Miller and Dan Scavino stayed close, while new allies loyalists willing to amplify the big lie jockeyed for influence. Mar-a-Lago wasn't just a retreat. It was a war room. Trump used it to plot his return, meeting with lawmakers, plotting endorsements, and keeping his base fired up. The FBI raid on August 8, 2022, shattered the bubble's illusion of invincibility. Agents searched Mar-a-Lago for classified documents Trump had allegedly taken from the White House, hundreds of pages, some marked top secret. The raid, authorized by a federal judge, was unprecedented. No former president had faced such scrutiny. Trump cried witch hunt, comparing it to Watergate and claiming the documents were his. Supporters rallied, with some calling for civil war on social media. The raid boosted his martyr status, raising $52 million for his political operation in days. But it also deepened legal peril, with investigations into obstruction and mishandling classified materials looming. Mar-a-Lago remained Trump's fortress. He hosted events even as boxes of documents sat in storage rooms, unguarded near ballrooms and bathrooms. The image, sensitive secrets amid chandeliers and cocktail parties, was quintessentially Trump. Reckless, ostentatious, and defiant. He wasn't hiding, he was performing, proving to his followers that no raid, no indictment, could stop him. Truth Social, a digital lifeline. Silenced by Twitter and Facebook after January 6th, Trump needed a new megaphone. Enter Truth Social, launched in February 2022. The platform, backed by Trump's media venture and a SPAC deal worth up to $1.3 billion, was billed as a free speech haven. Its logo, a red T mimicking Twitter's bird, promised a space where Trump could truth without censorship. The rollout was rocky. Technical glitches, waitlists, and a clunky interface frustrated users. By mid-2022, it had just 2 million active users, a fraction of Twitter's reach. Still, Truth Social gave Trump a direct line to his base. His posts, called Truths, were a familiar mix of boasts. I was right about everything. Attacks. Rhino Liz Cheney is a disgrace. And election fraud claims. He used it to amplify allies, mock enemies, and push conspiracies, like Dominion voting systems, rigging 2020. The platform's echo chamber suited him. No fact-checkers, no pushback, just loyalists amplifying his voice. Financially, Truth Social was a mess. Its parent company, Trump Media Technology Group, burned cash, posting $50 million in losses in 2022. Regulators probed its shaky SPAC deal, and critics called it a vanity project. But for Trump, it wasn't about profit. It was about control. Truth Social let him bypass the media, rally his base, and test run his 2024 campaign. Posts like, "We will win again," kept the MAGA faithful engaged, while his 5 million followers, small compared to Twitter's 80 million, were enough to keep him relevant. The platform also became a legal flashpoint. Posts about the FBI raid and 2020 election fueled investigations into obstruction and incitement. Yet Trump leaned in, using Truth Social to attack judges, prosecutors, and even the Justice Department. It was his digital Mar-a-Lago, a space where he set the rules and his followers played along. Midterm endorsements. Kingmaker in exile. The 2022 midterms were Trump's chance to flex his muscle. Barred from social media, under legal scrutiny, he still commanded the GOP's soul. His endorsements, over 200 candidates across primaries and generals, became the party's gold standard. Loyalty to Trump, especially fealty to the big lie, was the litmus test. Candidates who questioned 2020's outcome, like Kari Lake in Arizona or Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, got his nod. Those who didn't, like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, faced his wrath. Trump's endorsement process was chaotic, often impulsive. He'd watch a candidate on Fox News, hear a pitch at Mar-a-Lago, or act on a loyalist tip. Some picks, like J.D. Vance in Ohio, were unknowns he elevated to stardom. Others, like Herschel Walker in Georgia, carried baggage scandals, inexperience that made them risky. Trump didn't care about electability. He cared about allegiance. His Truth Social posts hyped candidates as America First warriors, while rallies drew thousands to hear him praise his chosen few. The results were mixed. In primaries, Trump's record was stellar. Over 90% of his endorsed candidates won, reshaping the GOP and his image. Vance, Lake, and Blake Masters in Arizona wrote his support to nominations. But the general election exposed cracks. High-profile losses, Lake, Mastriano, Walker, cost Republicans winnable races. Democrats held the Senate and lost fewer House seats than expected, flipping 40 seats in 2018 but only 9 in 2022. Pundits blamed Trump's toxic picks, with swing voters recoiling from election deniers. Trump spun it as a triumph. "We had tremendous success," he posted on Truth Social, pointing to GOP House gains and wins by loyalists like Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis. His base agreed, but party leaders grumbled. Mitch McConnell, sidelined by Trump's influence, called the losses a candidate quality problem. Rivals like DeSantis, now a 2024 contender, began eyeing a post-Trump GOP. Yet no one could deny his power. Trump's endorsements didn't just win races, they forced the party to bend the knee. The resurrection machine. Trump's exile wasn't quiet. Mar-a-Lago kept him visible, a constant presence at GOP events and fundraisers. Truth Social, despite its flaws, gave him a platform to shape narratives and attack foes. His midterm endorsements proved he could make or break candidates. By late 2022, he announced his 2024 run, standing at Mar-a-Lago's ballroom, vowing to take back our country. The crowd roared, undeterred by his legal woes or the midterm's mixed bag. The big lie remained his fuel. Polls showed 60% of Republicans still believed the 2020 election was stolen, a testament to Trump's ability to bend reality. He used it to rally supporters, raise millions, and cast himself as a victim of a corrupt system. Events at Mar-a-Lago, like $10,000A plate dinners, kept the cash flowing. His PACs raised $150 million in 2022, much of it from small donors who saw him as their champion. Legal clouds gathered classified documents, election interference probes in Georgia, January 6th investigations, but Trump turned them into badges of honor. "They're coming after me because I'm fighting for you," he told crowds. His base bought it, with 75% of Republicans saying they'd vote for him in 2024 per polls. Even the raid on Mar-a-Lago, a potential disaster, became a rallying cry, with T-shirts reading "FBI Fascist Biden's Inquisition" sold at rallies. Critics called him diminished, a has-been clinging to relevance. His Twitter ban and midterm losses stung, and DeSantis' star was rising. But Trump didn't act finished. He dominated cable news even without a tweet. His rallies still packed arenas. Truth Social, though small, amplified his voice to the faithful. And his endorsements ensured no Republican could win without his blessing or survive his curse. By the end of 2022, Trump was no longer president, but he was far from powerless. Mar-a-Lago was his castle, Truth Social his bullhorn, and the midterms his proof of life. The GOP was his, reshaped in his image, loyal to his lie. The nation watched, divided as ever, as he plotted his next act. They'd called him done before after bankruptcies, scandals, impeachments. Each time he'd risen. Now, in exile, he was doing it again, betting that America wasn't ready to change the channel. The trials of Trump. The defendant might become the president. Donald Trump's life had always been a high-stakes gamble, a tightrope walk between triumph and ruin. By 2023, the stakes were higher than ever. Exiled to Mar-a-Lago, he faced an unprecedented barrage of legal battles. 4 criminal indictments, 91 felony counts, and a civil maelstrom that threatened his fortune and freedom. Yet even as prosecutors closed in, Trump was running for president again, turning courtrooms into campaign stops and indictments into rallying cries. The 2024 campaign wasn't just a bid for the White House, it was a fight for survival, a spectacle where the line between justice and politics dissolved. As he stood trial, he reshaped the Republican Party, dominated the airwaves, and forced America to confront a surreal possibility. A convicted felon could win it all. It was a story only Trump could dream up, and he was living it, awake or not. The legal avalanche. 4 indictments. Trump's post-presidency was a legal quagmire, with 4 criminal cases converging like a perfect storm. Each indictment spanning 2023 was a headline, a history lesson, and a test of his political invincibility. Together, they painted a portrait of a man who'd bent the law to cling to power, hoard secrets, and silence critics. But to his supporters, they were proof of a weaponized justice system out to destroy their champion. 1. The classified documents case, June 2023. The FBI's 2022 raid on Mar-a-Lago uncovered the first major crack. In June 2023, Special Counsel Jack Smith indicted Trump on 37 felony counts in Florida, alleging he'd mishandled classified documents and obstructed justice. Hundreds of sensitive files, including nuclear secrets and military plans, were found scattered in Mar-a-Lago's storage rooms, bathrooms, and ballrooms. Prosecutors said Trump refused to return them, even after subpoenas, and directed aides to hide boxes. Photos of top-secret papers next to a shower curtain became a surreal symbol of his recklessness. Trump pleaded not guilty, claiming the documents were his and the raid was a Biden-orchestrated hoax. His base rallied, with 80% of Republicans calling the charges politically motivated per polls. The case's complexity, classified evidence, national security concerns delayed proceedings, with trials pushed past 2024. But the stakes were massive. Convictions could bring years in prison, though experts doubted a former president would serve time. 2. The January 6th insurrection case, August 2023. The Capitol riot haunted Trump's legacy, and in August 2023, Jack Smith struck again, indicting him on 4 counts in Washington, D.C., for conspiring to overturn the 2020 election. The charge is conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruct an official proceeding, and violate civil rights, zeroed in on Trump's role in spreading the big lie and inciting the January 6th attack. Prosecutors cited his "stop the steal" rhetoric, pressure on Mike Pence, and failure to stop the rioters. Trump called it a witch hunt to block his 2024 run. His Truth Social posts raged against Smith, whom he dubbed Deranged Jack. The case faced hurdles, free speech defenses, and a sympathetic Supreme Court, which in 2024 granted presidents broad immunity for official acts. The ruling narrowed Smith's case, forcing delays. Still, the evidence, texts, tweets, and witness testimony was damning. Polls showed 60% of Americans wanted accountability, but Trump's base saw him as a martyr, with rallies chanting, "Fight for Trump," 3. The Georgia election interference case, August 2023. In Georgia, Fulton County DA Fani Willis brought a sprawling RICO indictment against Trump and 18 allies, charging 41 counts of racketeering and election fraud. The case stemmed from Trump's January 2021 call to Brad Raffensperger, demanding he find 11,780 votes, and a broader scheme to submit fake electors. Willis framed it as a criminal enterprise to steal Georgia's election, with Trump as the ringleader. The indictment's scope co-conspirators like Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows made it a legal behemoth. Trump's mugshot, taken at an Atlanta jail on August 24, 2023, became iconic. He turned it into campaign merch, raising $7 million in days. Supporters wore Mugshot 2024 t-shirts. Critics saw it as proof of his fall. Conflicts of interest, including Willis's relationship with a prosecutor, delayed the case, pushing trials beyond 2024. Trump's defense leaned on free speech and political persecution, but the call's audio was hard to spin. 4. The New York hush money case, March 2023. The first indictment came from Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who charged Trump with 34 counts of falsifying business records. The case tied to 2016, when Trump paid $130,000 to adult film star Stormy Daniels to silence her about an alleged affair. The payment, funneled through lawyer Michael Cohen, was disguised as legal fees, violating New York law. It was the least severe of the cases, but the first to go to trial. In May 2024, a New York jury convicted Trump on all 34 counts, making him the first former president convicted of a felony. The trial was a circus. Daniels testified about a hotel room encounter, Cohen admitted to lying, and Trump ranted outside the courtroom, calling Judge Juan Merchan corrupt. Sentencing was set for July 2024, but delayed after the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. Trump appealed, and the case stalled with no jail time likely. His base shrugged. 70% of Republicans said conviction wouldn't change their vote, per CNN. The courtroom as campaign stage, Trump turned legal peril into political gold. Each indictment boosted his poll numbers, fundraising, and martyr narrative. His 2024 campaign, launched in November 2022 at Mar-a-Lago, leaned into the chaos. "They're not coming after me. They're coming after you. I'm just standing in the way," he told crowds. Supporters donated $250 million to his legal defense fund by mid-2024, much of it from small donors. Court appearances became campaign events. Trump arrived at courthouses flanked by cameras, delivering fiery speeches to MAGA faithful. In New York, he posed with supporters waving Trump or death signs. In Georgia, he held rallies post-arraignment, drawing 10,000. Truth Social amplified his defiance with posts like, "I will never surrender." His legal team, often outmaneuvered in court, excelled at public relations, framing every charge as election interference. The GOP rallied behind him. Rivals like Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, who'd hinted at moving past Trump, folded under his dominance. His primary win was a rout. 76% of GOP voters backed him, per AP, sweeping Super Tuesday. Endorsements from 90% of Republican lawmakers, including former critics like Ted Cruz, showed his stranglehold. The RNC, led by loyalists like Lara Trump, became a Trump campaign arm, paying his legal bills and purging anti-Trump staff. The 2024 campaign, chaos and comeback. The 2024 race was Trump versus Biden, A rematch few wanted, but everyone expected. Biden, now 81, faced doubts about his health and economy woes, with inflation lingering at 5%. Trump, 78, campaigned like a man possessed, holding 50 rallies by October 2024, drawing crowds of 20,000. His message was vintage: make America great again, again. He promised mass deportations, tariffs on China, and retribution against enemies. The big lie remained central, with 65% of Republicans still denying Biden's 2020 win. Trump's campaign was a masterclass in spectacle. He leaned on celebrity endorsements, Kanye West, Joe Rogan, and viral stunts, like serving fries at a Pennsylvania McDonald's. Truth Social, now with 10 million users, amplified his attacks on Sleepy Joe and Crooked Kamala, Harris, Biden's VP. He dodged debates, citing bias, but dominated airtime with Fox News town halls and X live streams. His legal battles fed his narrative. Every courtroom loss was rigged, every delay a win. Democrats struggled to counter him. Biden's campaign focused on democracy, warning Trump would end elections. But economic anxiety and border concerns hurt them. Polls were neck and neck. 538 gave Biden a 51% chance by October. Swing states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona were toss-ups. Trump's base, energized by his trials, turned out in droves, while Biden's coalition youth, minorities, showed less enthusiasm. The campaign wasn't without stumbles. Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance, alienated moderates with comments on childless cat ladies. A second assassination attempt in September 2024 at a Florida golf course rattled the nation but boosted Trump's sympathy vote. He blamed Biden's rhetoric, calling it incitement. The incident, like everything, became campaign fodder. Civil cases and financial hits. Beyond criminal indictments, civil lawsuits bled Trump's empire. In New York, AG Letitia James won a $454 million fraud judgment in February 2024, finding Trump inflated his net worth to secure loans. His properties, including Trump Tower, faced seizure until an appeals court lowered the bond to $170 $75 million. He paid, but the case damaged his tycoon image. Another suit by E. Jean Carroll awarded $83 million for defamation after Trump denied her assault claims. His net worth, estimated at $3 billion, took hits, with Trump Organization debts mounting. These losses, though, didn't dent his campaign. Supporters saw them as more deep state attacks. Mar-a-Lago fundraisers, charging $100,000 a plate, kept his war chest full. His brand, battered but resilient, thrived on defiance. The dream's shadow. Looping back to the intro's surreal bedtime vibe, Trump's 2024 run felt like a fever dream America couldn't wake from. He was born rich, but he always said he built it himself. Now he was indicted, convicted, yet closer than ever to reclaiming power. The contradictions that defined him, winner and loser, victim and victor, were on full display. Courtrooms didn't humble him, they elevated him. Each charge was a badge, each trial a soapbox. He wasn't just running for president, he was rewriting the rules of consequence. The nation watched, polarized and paralyzed. Half saw a criminal who'd torched democracy. Half saw a hero fighting a corrupt elite. Polls showed 47% would vote for him, conviction or not. The 2024 election, set for November, loomed as a referendum, not just on Trump but on America's soul. Could a man who lost, lied, and led an insurrection win again? The answer was unclear, and the ambiguity was the point. The American Sleep Cycle. As the campaign roared toward its climax, Trump stood at a podium in Arizona, October 2024, grinning under stadium lights. "We're winning, folks, bigger than ever," he roared. The crowd chanted, "USA! USA!" Behind him, a screen flashed his mugshot, now a symbol of resistance. He was 91, indicted. A billionaire under siege, a felon on the ballot. The trials weren't over delays, meant most wouldn't resolve before Election Day. The courts might cage him, or the voters might crown him. He changed the rules. He lost. He's winning again. And you're still not asleep. The irony hung like a question mark. Was this the end of Trump's dream or the start of a new nightmare? The answer wasn't in the courtroom, the campaign trail, or the polls. It was in the story itself, a tale of a man who could fall, break, and rise, all while convincing millions he'd never fallen at all. As America tossed and turned, one thing was certain: the show wasn't over.